This is the Picard podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're here talking about the finale of Season 2, Farewell. Welcome back, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. This is Derek, one of your hosts for the Star Trek Picard podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're here talking about the finale of Star Trek Picard Season 2, Farewell.
Hello there, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. Welcome back. I'm one of your other hosts, John.
And rounding out this triumphant season, I am Chris.
Triumphant season?
I don't know. I'm trying to be really positive coming into this episode.
Yeah.
I was slightly dour last episode, on our review. And while they landed, did they stick the landing? That is the question we are here to answer. And we're going to score it on a basis, much like the when you have that high diver diving into the water and everyone just goes a placard, just throwing it up. We're going to throw up our placards of discussion as we go into this.
Yes, as our wonderful fellow Trekkies and Trekkers know at this stage, we talk about the episode, we discuss it in detail, we talk about all the spoilers, everything that's going on in the episode that we want to talk about. We're not here to review it, we're here to discuss the episode.
Exactly.
Overall.
It's our placards of discussion.
Yes. Although I do give a review at the end. At least you
give a point score,
yes,
as a relative point score. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. But we're not here to review it, we're here to discuss what we thought of the episode. Right up front, I'll definitely say, this is significantly better than the last 3 episodes have been. We were really positive as the season began, got a bit negative for a couple of episodes, and at least this episode is far better than the last few episodes have been. I will definitely say that up front. Let's get into our discussion about the finale of Star Trek Picard Season 2. This episode was directed by Michael Weaver, who directed episode 9 of Star Trek Picard Season 2. The episode was written by Christopher Monfette and Akiva Goldsman, who wrote episode 2 and 3, and Akiva Goldsman is a lead producer on the series as well.
Excellent.
John, would you like to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for the finale of Star Trek Picard Season 2?
Sure. With time ticking down to the launch of the Europa Mission, Tallinn interprets the Borg Queen's message to mean that a sacrifice is required to save Renee. Despite Picard's protests, Tallinn uses a holographic disguise to thwart Soong's murder attempt on Renee. Tallinn is successful, but dies in Picard's arms while Renee departs on the Europa Mission. Meanwhile, Rafi, Seven and Rios take out Soong's backup plan to cancel the Europa Mission using his drones. After his failure, Soong returns home to find that Corey has deleted his digital files of his research, destroying his life's work, but he still retains a physical backup with the file labelled Project Khan. Kor, following an unexpected message about what is next, meets with a traveller formerly known as Wesley Crusher and is recruited to join the travellers to watch and observe as she picks a path for herself that will place her in danger. With the Europa Mission safe, Rafi, Rios and Seven are believed to be stranded in the past, but Q arrives to speak to his friend, Picard, about the trial. Its purpose was for Picard to accept the past, his fate as the Jean-Luc he is, so that he can forgive the past and accept the love that is in his life. Q then uses the last of his power to send Picard, Seven and Rafi back to the Stargazer in their own timeline, where Elna is alive. Rios decides to stay in the past with Teresa and her son. On the Stargazer, with the self-destruct ticking down, Picard recognizes that this Borg Queen is Agnes, whose collective has detected the disruption in space. Cancelling the self-destruct, the Borg and Federation join forces and shields to stop a system-wide destructive event from the tear in space. Succeeding, a new transwarp conduit is revealed, part of a puzzle that is linked to a threat. Bugatti is unsure of what the threat is on the other side and offers to monitor the conduit in return for provisional membership of the Federation. Back on Earth, after reuniting with the older Guinan and learning about Rios' life in the 21st century, Picard returns to his chateau and asks Laris for a second chance. At love.
Exactly.
I'm glad they didn't show the kiss.
Yeah.
I was like, don't show it.
Oh, everybody deserves love, and this season taught us that Picard deserves love too. So
that is true, but I mean, it's kind of like walking in on your parents.
Yeah.
Or something like to that effect.
I get that. I get that. Well, as you know by now, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers, the way we cover our episodes is we cover our top points of the episode. We're going to start off with our general order, our small moment of the episode.
Make it so, number one.
Excellent. I'm going to jump in here quickly for the very first small moment, general order.
Okay.
We discussed off air a while ago the return of a certain character, a certain actor who transcends geekdom and has been in multiple shows and has brought his own skill sets to multiple programs. And you were like, nah, they're not going to do it. And who do we see at the return of this episode? The one and only Will Wheaton. He is back. Wesley Crusher.
Yes, we were talking about it as the announcement of season 3 announced the majority of the Next Generation cast returning for season 3 of Picard.
Yes.
But no announcement on Will Wheaton and his return on the show. So what I was saying was it was too complicated to get him back into the show. But I guess this entire exposition dump that Will Wheaton is given in this episode is how they reintroduce him, just to say goodbye and basically say, I'm not coming to season 3. This is me disappearing with one of your major characters. Bye.
Yeah. The other major character from this season, but technically not the android that's going to be in the next season, maybe. So Soji still may be there in season 3.
I didn't want to talk about this right now, but it is part of the news that's come out since the show is completed. A significant number of the actors from this season have confirmed they're not in season 3. We'll talk about some of the characters, obviously, that are leaving here. Rios, obviously, is staying back in the 21st century, so he's not returning for next season. It's been confirmed Alison Pill has said she hasn't filmed anything for season 3, so she's not returning for season 3. And Issa Briones has also said goodbye to Star Trek Picard. So the story in season 3 is going to follow a new story, and probably to do with the threat that we'll see at the end of the episode.
Okay, that's really weird, because I assumed that this new conduit that came like a bolt out of the blue and a huge surprise was in some way linked to the threat from the technology that we saw in season 1, right at the end, that was trying to come through the portal that had been created. And so I was linking that to, coming back to Chris's point, this conversation between Wesley Crusher, now a traveller, and Corey, in that she was going to be looking out for either the robotic future from the first season, but also potentially this threat that we only glimpsed very, very briefly in season 1. You know, it'd been built up about this annihilation of organic life through this technological, mechanical, robotic, sentient being. And so I kind of thought this was maybe another way, or at least this conduit was being linked to, you know, the Traveller and this conversation. So hearing that Issa Briones is not coming back, I'm like going, okay, so it is just going to be some kind of whole new thing.
I remember Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire confirmed that they weren't in Spider-Man No Way Home.
That's true.
Before it came out, but as the season finale aired, lots of these actors went on their Instagrams and Twitter to say goodbye to their characters. That was the end of their time, but absolutely possible that these characters will have small roles in the next season. Issa Briones, really, the amount of screen time she got this season, given that she was the second major character in season 1, was significantly smaller in season 2 than it was in season 1. But yeah, lots of people saying goodbye. Lots of the main cast saying goodbye.
Interesting.
It is interesting, because I'm most surprised at Alison Pill, given that she's monitoring this transwarp conduit, which you would expect is going to be the season 3 sort of what everything hinges around in terms of the threat and everyone from Next Generation returning. So, I mean, even if it was just literally the first episode where she's still monitoring and, you know, so I guess we're just going to see something destroy the Borg ship, I guess, or something like that without ever seeing into it. I mean, and you're right, because ultimately if she's just said, I haven't yet filmed anything.
Filming has completed for season 3, but she could have filmed her scenes really early on and thought it was part of season 2, and they're just incorporating them into season 3. That could absolutely be it. It could be something at the first episode, but it was just something because of this moment with Crusher effectively arriving back to incorporate Corey into the Watchers. Effectively. It's really just to tie up the story point that we had throughout the season of who Tallinn is and what Tallinn's purpose is and who was it that sent her as a Watcher to Earth. So this is the artist formerly known as Wesley Crusher saying, I'm a traveler. We're the people that place Watchers in the universe at distinct points in time where they can intervene in case the future gets off balance effectively. So it's a really interesting scene, but it is really exposition heavy for such a big moment.
Yeah, no, and that was kind of my point, and that was where I was like, oh, cool, he's traveling, so we will see him probably pop up with Corey in the next season, because that was where my head was, because I was like, oh, cool, so her point in time is going to be somewhat, like, thrown into our season 3, and she'll be, like, another Watcher on the, because also, and I'm jumping, Borgatti uses the term, will be the Watchers on the wall. Which is a biblical term. Some people remember from Game of Thrones. It's that whole thing of the Black Guard. You are the people on the wall watching over the oncoming kind of apocalypse. You are you're the first line of defense. So I took that plus the Watchers and Travelers, and I was like, oh, cool. So Crusher's here. I was like, oh, grand. So like they're kind of giving him the slice now, and he'll be even bigger in the next one. So interesting. I think we're all on different, but yeah, maybe it's just quick films now and nothing major into the next, aside from another cameo. I was just very happy to see him. I always loved Crusher. I love Will Wheaton. But yeah, anyway, that was my small point for this episode. Yeah,
it was great. It was great to see him back. It's great to give him that moment, especially, as you say, Chris, when he was taken from the show in Next Generation, when he was taken away as this character going off with the Traveler. It was all explained as he was going to have all these adventures, and you're kind of thinking, oh, I'd love to see those adventures. That'd be great. Yeah. And then you never saw him again. So this is the first time we've seen him in, what's it now, 25 years or 20 odd years since the end of Next Generation. First time we've really seen the character. I'm sure there's some books out there of adventures. But
I would definitely like to see the adventure where he ruined a century in one, on one planet, through miscommunication.
Yes.
I think that would be quite
the last
good.
time he made a joke.
Yes, exactly.
Good stuff. So yeah, a big surprise seeing him there. And as Chris said, I had said before that I thought it was a bit too complicated to bring him back. So interesting to see how they did it, for this episode. And an interesting end for Corey.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Kind of, I think she needs to come back to have real interest here. I mean, if it's just like off into the sunset, fine. But I just because she's not been in the series that much, it's kind of like, okay, this is setting up season 3, but if she's not coming back, it's kind of, okay, what, I guess it loses a bit of its impact and meaning, to be honest.
It's effectively saying that she's going on to greater things, much like when Wesley Crusher was taken away, and we've seen a character like Tallinn throughout this series as to what a Watcher is and what their plan is and what their job is, I suppose. So it's kind of saying, right, Corey, you're going off to the same life that Tallinn had because we feel you can be a great Watcher. So interesting.
Yeah. My small moment is a surprise, a gift from Q, not just to Rafi or Picard, but also to the audience. Yes, he gave us back Elnor. Elnor resurrected on the helm of one of the starships.
Yes.
Yes, he does need to sort out his harmonics a little. He's obviously not got the groove when it comes to setting up shields, but nonetheless, I'm glad he was brought back.
Yes.
That is the great thing about Q. With a click of the fingers, something magical can happen in terms of, no need for slingshots around the sun this time to sort of time travel, just the old snap of the little fingers, and we get them, everyone back in their sort of timeline that we started with. But for me, really good to have Elnor back in this moment. And I love the reaction on Rafi's face as well, just seeing that,
Just a little lump at her throat, you can see
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Like, goddamn Q, like, both he's a pain in the neck and, well, isn't that nice?
Exactly. Now, in fairness, I know you said that he couldn't align the shields on the Excelsior when he returned, but in fairness to him, he literally says, I was on La Serena and now I'm back at the control station here. Oh, what am I doing? Because, he is an ensign as Rafi says. So in fairness to him, he's literally just appeared back to life.
Absolutely.
So I can understand why he's not great at his job immediately, but it does get it sorted pretty quickly.
Absolutely. So. And it does kind of confirm that it really was just that core central team that were taken out by Q into the alternate timeline.
Yeah.
Not everyone in the vicinity of the Borg ship from episode 1. Otherwise, I guess everyone would be going,
what the
how
hell?
do I use how do I use this?
I was just dead. What's going on?
Exactly. So, nice to see Elnor back in this scene, and nice to give him a moment at the end with his family around him. That was a nice moment. So
I really liked that. I must say, I did like that ending as well. The old family sort of post work booze up. It's kind of like a Thursday night in the Federation.
Yeah,
go drinking on a school night. I
Off
guess.
to Guinan's, sure, why not? Off to number 10 Forward Street. Yes. Very cool. From my small moment in the episode, I'm just going to mention it here because it's been going on and on throughout the season. Rios does stay. What a shock. The most unsurprising moment of the episode so far. Rios stays behind in 2024. Thus giving Q the power to bring Elnor back to life, effectively. So Q wouldn't have been able to do that if Rios went along with them. He says, now that I have that extra boost of power by not having to take you through forward into the future, I'm able to provide an extra special gift, effectively. So at least at some point to Rios staying behind. It's such a shame because I do love the character, and he's had practically nothing to do other than do a will I won't I stay in 2024. That's kind of it throughout the season, but we should mention it here, I suppose. And at least there is that little moment from Picard saying to him, is that a good idea? We're in 2024. Yes. Will this cause some major ripples in the timeline? So at least we do get a little bit of that, and we hear more about him in the future.
Yeah. And I will discuss that as one of my major points for this episode later.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I wish he didn't stay behind, to be honest. I like the character Rios. Again, I think he's possibly been a little underserved, with his sort of will I, won't I kind of thing, and with Teresa, but I at least really enjoyed again with the Thursday night drinks, that they got to hear about his life in that time. So that felt quite a nice cap off to that, even though I wish he was still in the 24th century.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, as you say, we do hear about his history. It does seem like he's had a really good impact on society at the time. Guinan says that Rios dies in a bar fight, fighting over medical supplies, smoking a cigar. So even though we didn't see it on screen, it is confirmed that he does finally get to smoke a cigar back in 2024. But weirdly, I don't know whether this is the right place to pick it up because it's supposed to be the small point section, but it is delivered as a small point. It is literally delivered as a line of dialogue for Guinan, the entire wrap-up of what's happened in the past. So Renee was going into space because she needed to find an organism from a planet that nobody else would have found if she wasn't on the mission, effectively.
Yeah.
What's described by Guinan is she brings that back, and by the time she comes back, or a little later at least, Ricard
figures out what to do with it.
Yeah, who's Teresa's son. He has set up a body which uses this organism to clean the oceans, clean the skies, and develop a better and brighter future. So I thought that was really interesting, given how much the battle throughout the season has been to get this Europa mission out there, that this is told in dialogue, in one line of dialogue from Guinan. I thought that was an interesting choice, and you could have missed it.
Yes.
Given how much else was going on in the scene. But but that's where that is.
Good on Ricard. Yes.
Absolutely. It's great that he has had that impact, but I kind of feel you might have had that in a history book or some kind of lesson that's being taught rather than a line of dialogue, because it seems like quite a big thing. If you've solved global warming and you've cleaned the earth and sky, that's quite a big thing to have achieved.
And how he met with his auntie Renee when they have never met before. They have never interacted.
Yes, but Rios would have been fully aware of him, and Rios is his father now. Rios has stepped into his father role, so surely he will keep in contact with this woman who was saved by Tallinn, saved by Picard. So, of course, they'd keep in contact. I totally understand that, but again, the fact that it's a dropped line rather than a bit more on screen, I thought was a bit odd. Yeah. Let's get on to our medium moments with our small moments covered.
Implement the Omega Directive immediately.
Our Omega Directive, our medium point. Who wants to kick off with theirs?
I will, because to be honest, this had a little bit of the same impact as the Battlestar lily flowers from season 1 for me. Was the whole transwarp conduit, because it just happened right at the end, really quickly, and really cool, loved it and everything, but I was kind of like going, what's happening now? Like, this could go on for another hour. I was expecting a whole additional 30 minutes of storytelling. And it just kind of happened because, as I say, I thought it was really cool with, and I guess it's just connecting it back to Bugatti and Agnes there being the Borg Queen, which we had kind of, had sort of nailed that surprise a while ago.
Yeah.
But here she is giving the reasons for taking over all the Federation ships in order to create a shield for a disruption, an energy signature in space that is about to go Death Star on a planet that looks very distinctly like Coruscant, with the round circle lights and being heavily urbanized.
Yes, it did look very Star Wars.
It did. And so creating this protective shield by aligning all the ship's shields to sort of rebuff that, and then as that energy has been expelled, there is this transwarp conduit which contains a threat at the other end of it. It's not something to do with the travelers that I was kind of thinking it could be, but there is some threat at the end that even the Borg Collective, with all their knowledge that they have amassed, are not sure of what that threat is, only that there is a threat linked to this transwarp conduit. So for me, like, I thought this was really, really cool, but it started to make me think, I just wish we had kind of come back to this timeline in maybe episode 8 or something, so that this just wasn't as big a surprise, or it, it kind of was just sort of explained and developed and provided for through the episodes a bit more, because it felt like the sort of launch Battle Flowers a bit. It was like, oh my goodness, this is happening. So whilst it was cool and all that, and I really enjoyed it, I really liked it sort of cementing this whole thing, cementing Agnes as still being there, sort of in the Borg Queen, having taken a different direction for the Borg, that the juicy kind of aspect of the Borg being part of the Federation, this new Borg. So I did really enjoy it, but it did feel like it came from left field, because like from episode 1, all the Federation going to this signature then was for the Borg Queen, or so I thought. Now it could be that it was this signature that they were actually going for, and then the Borg arrived. But maybe it's because episode 1 seems like a long time ago, that they were actually going there for this signature rather than the Borg signature, and the Borg signature appeared because, yes, they were then going to try and combat this energy burst.
Yes, so they were attracted there effectively because of this neutrino emissions and the damage it could do. When they get there, there's a message coming through for Picard. So what this episode here is effectively we have the resolution to Jurati's storyline. She has created a Borg that are willing to be protectors and willing to use their technology and use their abilities to protect the universe. We hear that she chose the music cue, effectively, the Je ne regrette rien, to calm down Picard so that he could have a moment of clarity to say, oh, actually, we need to work with the Borg here. Yeah. This is Jurati.
And don't blow myself up.
Exactly, and turn off the self-destruct. And once they've fixed the problem, once they've all worked together and fixed the problem, then we have this transwarp conduit that's coming up in the background. Do we think this is the species that were being called by Soji and her compatriots back in season 1 that almost got through to our universe and then were pushed back off? What we ended up finding out could be major villains in season 1, and then they were pushed back through the conduit, and they're coming through another way in this at the end of this season. So is there a tie back to season 1 here?
That was my thought. That, and it, given this is a contained 3 seasons, then I felt it would be a nice tie back. Yeah. But, with Agnes saying we know it's linked to a threat, but they don't know what it is, then I'm just not sure whether that's the case. As I say, that was my initial thought, that this sort of unknown sort of, technological species, really isn't known. In that sense, other than it's got sort of, mechanical octopus tentacles. Yeah. Nothing more is really known.
And not to poke holes in it, but Agnes Jurati was there in season 1.
Exactly.
Was there in season 2 and was there at this moment in episode 1 of season 2, has become the Borg Queen and has lived for 400 years since 2024 as the Borg Queen. Surely she had that knowledge and wanted to understand what that anomaly was and may have been investigating it for a couple of 100 years. But she did say with the combined might of the Borg, we still don't know what this is. So maybe she has been investigating, but couldn't find what the resolution was, who the species is.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's just very unclear. I guess we will find out in season 3 of Picard for sure. But it's
Doctor Strange coming through from the multiverse.
Yeah, well, it could be. But it's, but I think it's to the point. If it ends up being that, it will make the Borg collective intelligence seem a little sort of because, they can time travel around a sun and they can do fantastically, amazing things. Yeah. And yet they, did 1 and 1 and came out with 3 rather than 2.
Did 1 and 1 and didn't find the equation and didn't find the answer. Yes.
And again, if Corey is not coming back, or if Issa Briones is not coming back, then I guess it would make less sense to have it as that species coming in season 3. But who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
I was of the opinion that it is.
Yeah.
But I think that's more me being very hopeful, because then it ties it all together and we can watch season 1 to season 3
exactly
as a contained massive story. And hopefully there's then synthetic discussions, there's some Borg discussion, like it all roads lead to this end of season 3. And I don't know whether we're hoping that. That's the problem. So I'm going to very much wait and see. And if it is, fantastic. If it's not, then the question becomes, well, what you basically then set up potentially 2 different big bads, and one of them just got left on the table.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's likely that it's connected back to season 1. I don't think we actually need, not that I don't want Issa Briones back for the next season, but I don't think we actually need her back to introduce the big bad coming through. She thought of it as a prophecy, so I don't think we actually need any of those actors back for the next season if they do introduce this villain, whatever it may be. But let's just deal with it as the cliffhanger for the season. We're not supposed to know what it is, and we'll deal with it in season 3 when we find out more information about them. I think that's probably where we are.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Will we move on to another media moment? Chris, do you want to give us your media moment for the episode?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. It is essentially that Picard learns to love and gets the girl. He learns to love himself, accept himself, become the man that is Picard, accept the death of his mother, the loss of love, all that has led up to him being Picard. And then we get the 2 grandparents kissing in the conservatory moment.
Not kissing, Chris.
Or not kissing, or about to kiss, or just... I actually enjoyed this. Yeah. Now at the resolution point, I think, and again, this is what we always discuss about. It's always kind of interesting to kind of, when you get the full story, we always talk about how we will hold off judgment and kind of discussions until you see the full story that is trying to be painted by the writers. Yeah. In this case, Chris and Akiva. And what I always find interesting is, while some of this journey we have cocked an eyebrow at, i.e. like the very much like the storyline of the death of his mother and how like the doorway and the key and we'll talk about the key in a second, because obviously that gets into the whole Q aspect. But for this Picard learning to accept love, or accept that he is worthy of love, it was actually nice. It's a journey, and some of that journey did take an extra couple of minutes that we thought didn't need to be there,
or episodes.
But the actual, like I said, the resolution, the destination where we see Sir Patrick Stewart and Orla Brady there, like, damn, like, just actually kind of went, no, that's nice. It's like seeing her bag packed and him asking about a second chance. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's really nice. Yeah. Now, the only problem I have is Orla Brady needs to be a heavy character in season 3, because otherwise it is essentially, he goes, can I have a second chance? He's there for like 3 days and then goes off on another adventure. And she does it. So she needs to be there. She needs, as Laris needs to be incorporated into this as a recurring character, because otherwise it's just like, I've learned to love, I love you, bye.
Exactly. In fact, Laris even says to him that she's about to go off and have her own adventures, and he kind of says, can I join you on those adventures? So hopefully they'll be traveling on their adventures in the stars in season 3, so at least that might be where everything plays in.
Yes, hopefully. I will very quickly call out that Orla Brady has made a deal with Q's in the universe to be basically, the Irish genes are so strong that she is beautiful, just stunning and radiant in this final scene. Yes. Just you're looking at it going, she's 61 years old. Patrick Stewart's kind of 20 years her senior at 81. Yeah. And you're just like, there's a bit of a difference, but my God, I'm rooting for this couple. Absolutely. Well, to be fair, she is exceedingly old as a Romulan as well. So it kind of works out. Like, Patrick Stewart as Picard is much older, but it's only 81 in real life. Yeah. But anyway, I was very happy to see this resolution. I just hope it continues, this relation.
Exactly. For my medium moment from the episode, my Omega directive, I'm also going to talk about Orla Brady. And I'm going to have to go by what the show is telling us, and Tallinn is not Laris. It's gave us no indication that there is actually a connection other than Tallinn is Romulan. That's all we know, so we have to just accept Orla Brady played 2 completely distinct characters in here. But the character of Tallinn sacrificing herself, the death of Tallinn in this episode to save Renée, I thought this was actually quite moving. I thought it was really good that they had this moment where Tallinn goes and talks to Renée, the person that she's been monitoring since she was a child, and they have this discussion between them that all of those major moments in Renée's life, she's had this guardian watching over her, not a guardian angel, just a guardian watching over her. guiding her, making sure everything's okay. I thought that was quite a nice moment between the two of them, and to find out later from Q that this is the only timeline. Tallinn dies in every timeline, in every universe she dies. This is the only timeline that she's ever actually met Renee, making her life have greater meaning. I thought was a really special moment. We hear from her when she interprets Borgati's message that one Renee must die, one Renee must live, and she is the one that decides she's going to be the other Renee. We hear that discussion between herself and Jean-Luc, where he's trying to save her. He's trying to say she doesn't need to die, and she puts a fine point on what you were saying, Chris, puts a fine point on what the learning that he needs to make from his life. He can't save everybody. Everybody has to be allowed to make their own choices, even if that results in their own death or their own life.
Yeah.
And Picard's not responsible for everybody's life and death, including his mother's. So that is the fine point that this character puts on Picard's journey here in this season as well. So I thought it was a really important moment for the character, and I thought it was a really good, really well played moment. And Orla Brady is fantastic once again in these scenes as she meets the resolution of what she as a watcher is here to do. Did you guys enjoy these moments with Tallinn?
I did, actually. I thought it was really important that she actually did meet up with Renee, you know, and Renee realizing that she seemed vaguely familiar. So that notion of her being at those important moments with the particular sailing sort of that memento that she passes on.
I was trying to work out what that was. It looked really small for a necklace.
I didn't really know myself.
A bit too big for something that you'd put on your arm or your wrist.
Yeah.
But I just don't know women's jewellery that well.
But I liked that she, you know, laid it out to Renee, and then became the sacrifice in terms of interpreting that message from the Borg Queen before she scooted off in La Serena. So I really liked that.
Yep.
I thought, you know, having her, and to your point, it also adds to Picard's understanding of the notion of love, people having their own agency, and he ultimately is not responsible for everyone's, and certainly not when they're not under his command as a captain of a starship. So, I thought this was really good. I liked the little touch that this little amulet that was given by Tallinn to Renee is in the space shuttle as well that we see later, as they have broken the Earth's atmosphere and are on their way. So I really kind of enjoyed Orla Brady's performance, and I think it just gave her more than this notion of a watcher, you know, where she's effectively just sat in her apartment.
Yeah,
you know, the notion, I mean, it must be quite dull being a watcher. I mean, that's why that she was more active than maybe you'd been led to believe in terms of, you know, the no contact aspect.
A little bit, because what she says is, I was there at that moment when your raft capsized, or your boat capsized back many, many years ago when you were about 10. And then the other night you saw me at the event. So she hasn't been there for every single moment. She hasn't broken her watcher ability, but she has met her once in the past, and then seen her a couple of nights beforehand. It does obviously tie in really clearly with what Wesley Crusher's saying about what the watchers are there to do. They're there for a specific point in time to make sure the timeline stays on track effectively. And this is Tallinn's specific point in time. She has to go and do this. She has to sacrifice herself so that the person she's watching gets to complete their destiny effectively. But again, tying back in McHugh, Tallinn will always sacrifice herself, but this is the only time she'll meet Renee, which I thought was really important for this timeline. So really enjoyed that. Good to have a big resolution to the Tallinn story. And as I say, the show has not said that Tallinn is Laris, which is a little odd, but we'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I really enjoyed parts of this. I enjoyed the one Renee must live, one must die, and the resolution of that, because I still didn't figure it out. Even when it was like, when Tallinn was going, oh, I figured it out. Picard had figured it out. I was like, what? Huh? And it was only when he was like, you can't be doing this. You can't I was like, oh, okay. I thought there was going to be usage of her because we haven't really got much of it. Remember when she was body hopping at the very first time she was introduced? She was able to control other people's body and use it to talk to Picard.
Yes.
I thought that was going to be taken into account and be used in the place. So as a way to discuss with like multiple people talking to Renee. And I was like, oh, that would have been a nice callback to like episode where we first introduced to her. But no, I was like, okay, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I like the resolution of this part. What I didn't like was just no callback to how these two characters look exactly the same. No, like, even Picard going, I think I met your, like, great granny kind of, like, piece or that, like, just any call. But it was, cause I'm just like, if I went back in time and started to a degree romancing or having a something or an emotional connection with my wife's or my potential love interest, great granny, kind of want to say something, just kind of like, I at least like just admit to meeting this person, or hey, did you have a relative named? Just the fact that it wasn't called, it feels like either something like that was filmed and cut as a storyline, or it was a story beat left untouched.
Yeah. And I will say, I know we probably talked about it before as well, but obviously it's established in Star Trek that your ancestors look exactly like you and are played by the same actors as you in the movie of your life.
Yeah.
So that's the Soong story. We've had Brent Spiner in multiple occasions playing Soong over and over again, and they're all different. So it is established, but it did feel weird to call it out. Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard called it out earlier on in the season. We reveal that she's Romulan, but we don't ever have that discussion. You're right. There should have been a little moment where it's addressed, but it wasn't. So again, we have to just go with what the show says, I suppose.
Exactly.
That's it for our medium points. Let's move on to our Prime Directive.
We must face the ramifications of the Prime Directive.
Lots of endings in the episode. Again, it's the finale. Call farewell. Lots of endings in the episode. I think most of our big Prime Directive, our big moments from the episode, are the ends of where everything closes out. John, do you want to kick off with your big moment from the episode?
Certainly. It is Q here. I loved all this with scenes with Q, with him, with Picard at Chateau Picard in the conservatory, and then sending everyone, with the exception of Rios, back. And it made me long for wanting more of the interactions here.
Absolutely.
Sort of throughout this series, or throughout this season. And just laying some more breadcrumbs. So, as you say, you don't get this dump of Q. Nonetheless, the dump that we got was just great. I just really enjoyed the fact that, you know, this trial or the purpose of this was allowing Picard to pull back from all the responsibility that he has held around his mother's suicide, and that the important step here was that even though he knew how it plays out, he put the key back in the same position, so that this plays out again, because it shapes who he is. I think, you know, Q talks about, you know, in the moment that child took that key and opened that door, there was a crucible moment where Jean-Luc Picard happened, and what comes after. And he effectively protects that by putting the key back there. And then also more on Q's reasons for doing this, that he is alone. He is fading, he is dying, and he doesn't want Picard to die alone. I just love the moment when Picard says why, and Q says, finish that.
Yes.
And he goes, why me? And
yeah.
it's just really good because these two, yes, Picard has always believed this is, Q is a thorn in his side. He's the cat playing with the mouse. And this is the moment where it's like, actually, this is, a significant connection. He wants to be with Picard at the end when he expends the last of his power to transport them back to their own timeline at that right point in time. So that he's there effectively with his friend. I loved the hugging. I thought that was really good. It felt really emotional. So I just really enjoyed the emotional gravitas of these two actors.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah.
And with the rest of the team. And that click back. And even just the nice, kind gift that, as I mentioned for my first point, of bringing Elnor back. I just really liked that. And I actually just longed for more of this throughout the season. Because every time John Delancey and Patrick Stewart have come together in this season, it's just fantastic. It's just that shorthand that happens with these two actors from their days on Next Generation. It is something really special. And you can just see it, you can see it in this moment. It never disappoints. It's always kind of feels emotional, meaningful, and with such gravitas. And so I really enjoyed this purpose, for both of them.
Absolutely.
That they are both, at the end of their lives, whenever that happens, with someone that they care for.
Yeah, and they're not alone.
They're not alone.
Exactly. I really enjoyed this as well. I almost missed the line from Q saying when he uses this power to get them back into the future, that's the last of his power, and that's him dead. He's ending his life to send them back into the future. I almost missed that. And that adds the even more gravitas, I suppose, to the moment that Picard reaches out to him and says, "You're not alone either. You've got me," kind of thing. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah,
no, for me, this was a fantastic final feather in the cap that has been this story of Q and Picard for the beginning of Next Generation to the end. Like, this was just interesting. And it was that why, and then no, that's not the question. Why me?
Yeah,
that's why I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And
it starts with Q explaining it's not just about Picard, it was also about the humans' abilities, mankind's abilities. And I was like, that's cool, because it explains not just this season, but the trials itself.
Yeah.
And then beyond, it goes, well, no, I also did this season just because I feel like I want to help you, Jean-Luc. This one was about, all the before was about being Q and the trials and mankind and trying to show mankind's both fertility and opportunity for greatness. This was about showing you, Jean-Luc, making you grow and accept what was needed to be accepted.
Exactly.
Yeah. As he says, you humans, you're like butterflies with your wings pinned. You hold on to moments in time that forever, constrain you, restrict you, limit you. And the ability to unpin those wings so that you can truly then be, greater than the sum of your parts.
Yes.
And so it's really kind of, it's just very, very hopeful in terms of, the agency of humanity and so on as well. And I really, really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And call back to the conversation you had with Guinan earlier on in the season, which was that humans hold on to the past much more than they should. So a tie-in there. Not to poke holes in it, did really enjoy this resolution and the trial and what it's about. But there is a line back in that conversation with Guinan earlier on in the season that now makes no sense. Q pushed Picard on his trial to this future version of the world that's been destroyed by something that happened in 2024. And he says to Guinan, I'm not the one that sent him back in time. That wasn't part of his trial. But here at the end, he's saying it's absolutely part of his trial. He was pushing him back here so they could resolve the issues he had with his mother. So for some reason, that line now completely stands out as being incorrect. But you could argue that Q was pushing him on a path, and all of the choices that Picard made were Picard's choices. So, so he would expect that Picard would go back in time, knowing that this issue was caused in 2024. So you could probably argue that that's what they were trying to go for. But it felt like when Q said it, I didn't push him back in time. Well, how could it be part of your trial if you didn't push him back in time?
But no, I mean that's. I agree. I think it stands out, but I think it's that Q just didn't push him to 2024.
Yeah.
And it's because it's creating the agency. It's a trial. It's not about Q lining up the dominoes to knock them over for the light bulb moment. He puts him in a situation which actually, in this instance, Picard is thinking of all of humanity. Mm-hmm. And in the end, it becomes a very personal thing about him. And that's through the journey that he goes. So that's how I took it. So I absolutely get what you mean, that it feels the wrong statement, but I just wonder whether he's saying, well, I didn't move him to the point where I answered his question for him.
Yeah.
Because he could do that,
Oh, no, of course.
He could lay it all out like a smorgasbord. And so that is the journey. It is a trial. It's about the journey. And I guess Picard's journey involved time travel in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. It just felt like the way he said it, he was saying, I have no agency here in what Picard did, but what he really means is I knew he was going to do that. When I presented this situation to him, I knew Picard would only go and solve this puzzle because that's the Picard I know, and that's what Picard would do. And by solving that puzzle, he'll free himself of the guilt that he feels over what happened with his mother. So I guess that's the path. But I just wish it had been better told from Q. That's all.
A better turn of phrase. In that moment with Guinan, absolutely.
Yeah. That's it for Q, I guess. Overall, that's probably the last we'll see of John Delancey as Q. So a good goodbye to the character.
Agreed. And the only one I can think of is that we get a death scene of Jean-Luc in the next season, and you have John Delancey kind of standing in the background that he attended and died,
like the Jedi.
Yeah, well, I was more going with like the death of Captain Marvel, where you had all the heroes standing around the bed in comic books, essentially you had Captain Marvel in the middle and like all of the heroes and villains were standing around him. Okay. And you had time traveling people who attended because they came back for that one, they came back or forward for that one moment,
right,
just to be there. And I could see that kind of like his last breath was to take them home and then stay and hold Jean-Luc's hand as Jean-Luc dies. That's cool. Like, I could see you that, but even if not, this poignant moment where, like maybe I would have liked to see one last kind of Q fade to white, or that kind of, when he blipped in and out, that kind of piece. I would like to see that, but overall, this is theoretically the end.
Using the last of his power to, and that is what will lead him to his end. So he may not die instantly when he snapped his fingers and sent them through to the future. He may not die right there, but he's left here at least in 2024 without any powers. So and on to what us humans call death, as he says. So that could be the last of Q. Chris, do you want to give us your big moment for the episode that you want to talk about?
Sure. So, very much for me, I'm calling it the butterfly wing beats. Mm-hmm. So this is the only piece where I'm starting to have a bit of problem with the overall season. Taking account from a story perspective, right? Which is the now Rios has stayed. They have been in 2024. They have jumped around time. There has been phasers. There has been people teleporting. There's been multiple aspects of this. So there is, in my head, a lot of... And Picard calls it out to Rios in it, kind of going, what about the butterfly effects? Essentially, where if Rios stays, there is effects on history. And the way they have just got around this was going, but what if I was meant to stay? I'm like, true, paradoxical law, sure. Mm-hmm. But then we've got Borgatti being in the future. Mm-hmm. But that means then also, like, there's a lot of paradoxical elements being pulled into play here where, well, hold on, what about the other Borg? Mm-hmm. So what, like, have the other Borg always been, and Borgatti's been in the Delta Quadrant by herself as a side?
No, there is no other Borg.
Exactly. Mm. So then, how is Seven still Borged up when she returns to the future? There's just a lot of butterfly wings being created and like paradoxical elements to what has been the Next Generation.
So Seven's like that because Borgatti did that to save her life. So Seven's back to looking like the way she was when she was Borg because of what Borgatti did last episode to save her life. So she does look the same as 7 of 9, but the reason she looks like that is because if Jurati hadn't done that, she would have died last episode. So that's one of the things taken care of. I suppose I see your concern on this, on the Borg side of things, because Jurati has gone forward to the Delta Quadrant, spent 400 years setting up the only Borg. There is no other Borg in this new timeline, effectively, that's been created. So that means all of the adventures versus the Borg that have happened with all of the characters, everything that was set up to do with the Borg within the Star Trek universe doesn't exist in this version.
Exactly.
Of the
so
time.
Annika should not be on that ship.
She's there because Q sent her forward. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that kind of, oh no, well, all the season 1 with Hugh as an XB, all the aspects there, they've created a lot of paradoxical elements here. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm here for the story. I'm not going to try and pick apart every aspect, but they need to at least address parts of this, because even with the piece with Guinan, and you brought it up, that Rios's kid now is the one who saves all of Earth through finding Renee's organism that cleans up everything. Mm-hmm. So what was it before? Yeah. Like, they dropped that hint and then just let the thread die. Rios died in a bar brawl, kind of doing his piece. But what was it?
Yeah, I mean,
this was my only bit. There was just so many, and I'm kind of stumbling on my words because I wrote down a fair few, and I feel like I'm attacking some of the writers here. Mm-hmm. I don't want it to come across, because again, as a season, I think we're just as a discussion, as a season, there was a lot of fluff, but overall the story was quite fun. I was here for the journey. I'm here for season 3. Mm-hmm. It's now created a lot of question marks, which I can see both long-term fans and fair weather fans starting to go, but hold on, I don't understand. Now that kind of null and voids a lot of season 1 to a degree. What the hell? So what do you guys think?
I have 3 things on this, I think. I think very kind of briefly, possibly season 3 deals with that, if it is in that vein, okay? In terms of paradoxes with the timeline. Maybe that's the thing. I think the other side of it is potentially that what has happened has happened. So again, it's how you're viewing jumping through time and the differences. And I mean, I'm coming at this based on effectively the new or maybe the more accurate description of it that came through with Endgame and so on, in that the past doesn't change. It has happened. So the Borg, Locutus and so on has happened. It's just that now that timeline remains there, but there is these developments that has changed it, but it doesn't wipe them out as ever having happened. As opposed to, yes, the Back to the Future and the Star Trek idea of time from yesteryears of if you change something, yes, you have implications through time. But I think it comes to then ultimately the writing, actually, in that then they need to be clear on what's happening. And it's to your point about, whether it's the comment, that we've discussed around, Q saying, well, he didn't plan for Picard to, I didn't send him back through time. If that is and the way that was expressed, or it's the body hopping that you talked about earlier. Tallinn has that skill and some reason no longer uses it. And that could have been how, it could have been utilized in other situations. So I just feel that maybe the writing needs to tighten up across the full season. And for whatever reason, it's maybe just been a little bit flabby. So they're my kind of 3 points on that. I'm not too worried. Like you say, I'm happy with what's been presented, and I'm not really too much bothered around the butterfly effects happening. But I do think there's a few things that possibly link to that for me.
The one thing I'll call out, it's a point for and a point against, which is in the chateau just before Q arrives. Picard calls out the bullet holes that were, he said that in his time, his mother, when they were doing up the chateau, it was they were bullet holes from a different storming when they were protecting it. And he goes, they're still in the same place. So I took that as that these are bullet holes created from the storm of the Borg military on the chateau just now, just taking place. But I think some others have said that they were there already and they've always been there from when World War II. But maybe they actually weren't, and they were there. The later Picards thought they were there from World War II, when actual fact it was always the Borg, and that was always going to be there. And this is the paradoxical elements. I'm like, I just need a bit more tightening. And again, it's fine. I'm over analyzing. I'm over discussing.
I think it
was just a piece.
Yeah, I think the bit I didn't like about the writing there was when Picard points out that the bullet holes were there, like they were from World War II. And Rios goes to him, so does that mean we're on the right track? We're on the right timeline? And Picard goes, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
Why are you writing lines like that saying, I don't know? Because you wrote the line before it. Write the line saying, it does, or probably, or something like that. I don't know.
And the thing is, Rios being concerned about it then, and then saying, I'm staying back.
Yeah.
And what potential implications that has. So
yeah, there's a couple of things that probably have to happen to resolve that. Rios, remember, the whole issue with him being there was that he didn't have any paperwork and would always be caught as being someone that doesn't belong in this society until he gets all the forgeries and that kind of stuff done, I guess. So that has to happen, or else he can't set up his time there. But at least they do have a bit of lip service. In fact, they call it by the name you're using, Chris. They specifically have a moment where Rios puts together everything that they have used in this timeline into a bag and goes, that's all the butterflies I can possibly find. He specifically calls out the phasers that they've used, the communicator badges that they had left behind, that he gets them all together, puts them in a bag to get rid of them. So they don't leave anything behind that could cause an impact of what they had done. So at least they have that, and they say that. So they've only really interacted with about 5 or 6 people that could be aware of them, and all of those have kind of agreed to not talk about it. So
except Soong.
But Soong's Soong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, people won't believe what Soong, if he does happen to bring it up, they won't believe him. So
problem with that, Talon's apartment. That was the one I went, okay, yeah, you need to be doing that in Talon's apartment because she literally had a thing on the wall that was alien technology.
Not to give the show too much credit again, but we have had the conversation where Wesley Crusher has come back and said they've set up Watchers in multiple universes. So that's the responsibility of the Travelers, not the responsibility of Picard's crew. They've probably had to do the burn and run a couple of times.
True. Okay. Yeah. Fair point. Yeah.
So.
But look, my whole thing is, I hope some of this is addressed in season 3. I think even just with some lines to discuss, what is this a new timeline? Is this a continuation? Like, is this actually a 30 episode season? Is this like one big storyline back to front where they've broken into 3 seasons, and like then you go, oh well, this has been, we fix this here, and it's all been, it's a beautiful tapestry we can only just see one small part of right now. We will see, and I think that's the key. But overall, I was just like, it was just, as someone who enjoys timey-wimey kind of storylines from Doctor Who, from everything, from the Avengers, from comic book, when I see some of these, the fallacies of paradoxical bits and time travel, and it's just, you can easily address it with narrative and with discussions, but they just miss that. And I was like, okay, hopefully we just get this, because I just don't fully understand where we are right now. And I think that's, as someone who is fully invested into this universe, into this, like, as a Trekkie, I'm like, huh?
It felt a little hand-wavy by the end of the
yes.
season. It was like, yeah, okay, we're just going to finish that season and do that here.
Yeah. It's like, don't look over here. Don't look over here. It's fine.
And as we said before, there was so much useless material that could have been excised from 2 or 3 episodes this season to allow us to expand and have a bit more on the things that were really important in this episode, because there was loads. I'm going to go on to my prime directive for the episode. The only other moment we really haven't talked about is kind of the failure of Soong's plan. We talked about Tallinn thwarting him and him going back to his apartment effectively. But I really liked that we got a little bit of impetus from Corey here, the kind of payback for everything he'd done, all of the things he had done to affect her life and the lives of her sisters, as she calls them, all the previous augments, or all the previous versions of Corey that had died. She wipes every single bit of his research. So previously he didn't have the key that finalized and created Corey, had the key to keep her alive. That was provided to Corey only by Q, which allowed her to become a proper person that could live on. So he didn't have the key, but at least he had the research up to that point. Now Corey's taking all of that away. So really like this payback for evil Soong, for all the things he did and all the things he tried to do throughout the season. I thought that was good payback. And then the last thing we see is a little nod to yes, Project Khan is in his desk.
Yeah, that was cool. And also the important reminder to keep a hard copy backup.
Absolutely. Yes, always keep a hard copy. Computers will not store it, especially if somebody hacks into it. So the Khan project is something that is already in train. He's not created Khan. Khan is something that has already happened, effectively, but he has the details behind it. Khan was a superhuman in the Star Trek universe, effectively an augmented human, created and better than all other humans around him, effectively. And of course, that started a big war, big problems. But Soong was involved in that. But he didn't create Khan, but he is involved in the creation of other augments. So it's a little nod to his future path that he's going to go down, which does create quite big problems for Earth of this time.
And can you explain what that is for those who aren't into? Because I know this should be important to you guys. I don't know fully why. I know the name Khan. I was like, huh? I don't fully get it. Can you explain for people who are just into Picard, maybe not fully into Next Generation, or hasn't watched any of the other shows, movies, etc. Like just a quick Primer.
Absolutely, yeah. Khan Noonien Soong is probably the greatest villain from Star Trek, the original series. He was in one episode of the series in the 60s, where it was revealed that he effectively was frozen in time and travelled forward and went up against Captain Kirk to try and take the Enterprise from him because they were cryogenically frozen and effectively fired out into space after the war to get them away from Earth. They tried to take over the Enterprise and were sent to a planet after Kirk had effectively fought against them and calmed them down. They were sent to a planet to live out the rest of their extended lifetime. Following that, in the best Star Trek movie, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, we find out that actually, after sending them to the planet, there was an event that killed all of Khan's loved ones, all of the people that he loved on the planet, his wife, and some of the other members of his crew. So they go back on the attack against Captain Kirk. So a fantastic movie. I'm sure most of our listeners have watched that one. That's up there with First Contact as one of the best Star Trek movies. But he also returned in Star Trek Into Darkness, a very different version of Khan, but a very angry version of Khan, played by Benedict Cumberbatch. And he used the pseudonym throughout that movie of John Harrison, which is the person to my right. So we've had Benedict Cumberbatch. No relation. But you were very excited to go to see the movie at the cinema with Benedict Cumberbatch, who plays Doctor Strange, the wonderful Doctor Strange, playing John Harrison.
Yes, exactly.
Will he play you in your biopic?
There's not many times you go to a big budget movie where your name is like one of the lead characters. It'd be like being called Chris Pine, for example, or I guess Benedict Cumberbatch.
Well, yeah, but it was even weirder because for some reason the writers of Star Trek Into Darkness decided to keep it secret that it was that Benedict Cumberbatch was playing Khan right up until like a week after the movie was released. So you had posters with Benedict Cumberbatch plays John Harrison on them and stuff. So that was all exciting, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, is that enough on Khan?
It's interesting to see that. So like it is a huge potential callback, and kind of it's just cementing that this is who and how some of this began.
Yes, it connects Soong into that storyline of the augments and the battle for Earth, effectively. So, really cool that they tied that in. But I would highly recommend, if you aren't a big Star Trek fan, haven't watched the original series much, go check out Space Seed, excellent episode, which introduces Khan, followed by Star Trek The Wrath of Khan. And then if you have a bit of time, check out The Wrath of John Harrison in Star Trek Into Darkness, with Chris Pine. There you go.
I will.
There you go. Excellent. That was my major moment for the episode. Overall, anything else that you want to talk about from the episode that we haven't gotten to?
Not from my side.
Nothing from mine.
Good. Overall, what did you think of the episode? Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 10, Farewell. Chris, overall?
Overall, I am happy. It's happy with a question mark. It is essentially it's a paradox. I am both happy and unhappy. I am Schrodinger's discussion point. No, overall, they actually did something that I didn't think they did. They did wrap it up, and they did make sense, because as coming into this episode, we were like, a Renee must live and a Renee must die. What? Huh? Like, how? What? You've just created Borg. What does this all mean? I think part of me is still hoping that season 3 addresses a lot of these loose threads and addresses some of these paradoxes. Yeah. And I think once we get that in season 3, then I think I will look back on this season and this story as being something monumental in the beginning, in the formation of like the Trek lore. But I can't address that until that season 3. So this is where this question mark comes in. I am happy with how they wrapped up parts of it. I'm happy with the Q storyline, to a degree. It's again, all 2 degrees of question marks. So overall, I enjoyed this episode. I'm happy with where we landed with question marks going into, okay, well, where do you go and how do you tie these loose threads back in?
Very good.
But so that's mine.
Excellent.
Mr. Harrison, Khan, what do you think of this episode.
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode. I more than I thought I would do. I would give it 4 resurrected Elnors out of 5. I liked how it tied back together. I loved Q's end journey and Picard's end journey here. Thought it was really, really good. I loved Elnor coming back. I loved the bar scene of them just, toasting to family, this group, of, and family unit, even though they're not related. I really enjoyed that. That chimes with me. I really enjoyed Agnes coming back. I loved the transwarp conduit. I loved Wesley Crusher. But that's me sort of just riding with it, riding the waves,
the transwarp wave.
The transwarp waves. The problem for this is just, they spent ultimately, in my mind, spent way too long in 2024, needed to cut that a little bit short. I think you're right. There's so many hurricanes that potentially could be spinning around the galaxy as a result of what they've done. Really not careful around the Prime Directive, like you would see to an OCD type length from other shows. But I don't necessarily mind that. So I think there are a lot of surprises and things that needed more clarity and should have been provided for, I think, within this season. But nonetheless, in terms of the episode, I really did enjoy this. Having Wesley Crusher come back as the Traveller was really good, and I want that to have an effect. I don't just want Wesley Crusher to be there for that one scene in order to effectively allow Corey or Issa Briones to effectively leave the show, which, if that is the case, it just is superfluous. It means nothing. And everything that they write should mean something. And they should be doing a Kevin Feige of how this connects around the Star Trek universe, because there are a lot of changes here, potentially. And that includes being clear about how they're viewing time travel. Is it the Marvel Avengers way, or is it the Terminator way? It seems to be the Terminator way, and
which would be weird considering, as I say, why would everybody be up in arms in the future when Jurati Borg has arrived there if the Borg have been this kindly presence for 400 years in the galaxy? But yes,
So I did enjoy this episode, but they need to get tighter in their concept and structure and writing, for sure. And that's why I really hope season 3 links in to parts of this season, and that this talk of a number of that core new team around Picard haven't just been sacrificed to bring back the old team. I want the old team back, absolutely, but I want it to be with this new team. This is a new hub around Picard. And so, it's interesting. I mean, and I don't want to theorize about what happens in season 3, and how the whole 3 seasons will be viewed in the future. But ultimately, yes, I think we mentioned this before. I'm a little coloured of this being the weak second album, ultimately, or the weaker second album.
Yes. Richard Blaze's feedback last week. Yes.
Yeah. So, but ultimately, I enjoyed the resolution, and primarily because of the actors and how it brought them to a conclusion. But that conclusion has huge ramifications that haven't been necessarily explored or dealt with better previously. So I would give this 4 resurrected Elnors out of 5. So Derek, what is your thoughts on episode 10 of Star Trek Picard season 2?
Same as you guys, but I think I'm a little bit higher on the episode itself. I really enjoyed the finale episode, but wow, when you take it in context with the season, it just has put so much stuff forward in one episode that really needed more time throughout the season. It feels like the producers from Paramount, which we talked about last week, what they've done is tried to create an event series because they have Patrick Stewart back. They want to create this big event for everybody that wants to watch it. And part of that's going to be the big thing in season 3, which everybody's still talking about. It's still making news. All of the cast of Next Generation coming back for the final season. That seems like an event that they're writing around. This episode felt the same way. The return of Wesley Crusher is a big event. The death of Q is a big event. The fact that we have this new version of the Friendly Borg is a big event. And they wrote around those 3 big events to close out the season. That's too much to put into an episode overall. Yep. But the episode was really good and really enjoyable. I wish it had been spread across the season and had a number of revelations, a number of payoffs throughout it, and just not had as many moments with 2 people in a room talking about what they might do or talking about their past, because that got really grating throughout this season. So overall, on this episode, really positive, really enjoyed it in comparison to the last few episodes, but I love the season. It felt better and had been written much tighter. Even with the same number of episodes, I think you could have spread what's in this episode better across the season to make the season feel better. And I am concerned about season 3, given how many of this cast is not coming back for it. Yeah. I feel like it's going to be a brand new story, a final adventure for the Next Generation crew, as opposed to tying things together and making a final season that caps off the story of the 3-season Picard arc.
Yeah. Well, there are thoughts, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. Let us move on to your thoughts in a moment. But before we do, let's get to 10 Forward and the 10 Forward pub quiz question.
Yes, let's get our family of TV podcast industries over to have a drink in 10 Forward. John, what is the pub quiz question, the final pub quiz question for this season of Star Trek Picard?
Yes, question 10 is... what astronaut does Tallinn replace to speak with René Picard before takeoff?
Very good. Yes, that is, it is spoken out loud. It is on screen. You'll definitely see it. Check it out. Once you have the answer to that question, send in the answers to all 10 questions to us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. We'll reveal the results, the winner of the Star Trek Picard goodies in a couple of weeks' time when we do a quick wrap up on Star Trek Picard Season 2. John, do you want to give the question one more time?
Yes. What astronaut does Tallinn replace to speak with René Picard before takeoff? Please, fellow quizzers and Trekkies, send in all your answers to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com.
Exactly.
And there will be goodies transporting their way to a lucky person in the future.
Exactly.
Of which timeline, I do not know.
And if you've missed any of the 10 questions that we have for this season, just pop on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com. All of the questions are up there for you, and you have a couple of weeks to get those into us. Let's get over to feedback for these episodes. Kicking us off, we have a little bit of feedback on last week's podcast, actually, on episode 9. Dr. Bob Phillips says, great to hear the voice of an angel back in full flow with Chris's La Serena song last week. Thanks, Dr. Bob. Don't encourage him.
Hey, margarita. Hey! Since we just came from 10 Forward, I thought I'd do a margarita joke.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Dr. Bob. Jamie Lawton says, I loved ECH Elnor taking out Borg Team 6 with his sword after rejecting all the other more modern weapons in the lockers. Someone pointed out that's a reference to Pulp Fiction, because Bruce Willis's character goes through a whole share of weapons and picks out the sword to do his damage in Pulp Fiction. I'm not going to tell you what scene that is, but you'll remember the Bruce Willis scene,
yes,
where he carries his sword. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Laura Redenbach pointed out what Chris had thought were other weapons on the wall of the bunker in Chateau Picard were actually racks of wine bottles. Thanks, Laura. Well,
yeah, thanks, Laura. Yeah, look, that does make sense. It's a wine cellar within Chateau Picard. Yeah, It would make sense that there is some bottles of Chateau Picard 1945.
Yes.
It's a good vintage year, I hear.
Yes, thank you, Laura, for spotting the wine in the cellar there. On the season finale, William Walton says, great episode. Thought a descendant of Rios and Teresa was going to show up in the bar during Picard's conversation with Guinan. I know the Next Generation cast are showing up for next season, but do you think we could also see characters from Deep Space Nine and Voyager? I think that's certainly a possibility, given we have 7 of 9 in the show already. So we've had name drops for Janeway. So for sure, I think that is a possibility. But I have a feeling they're more likely to focus on the Next Generation group, and it might just be more name drops or references.
I think so, yeah. I know Kate Mulgrew's doing a voice on Star Trek Prodigy, reprising the character of Janeway, but I don't think she's going to be coming back in live action as that character. You could argue, of course, that since Worf was on 4 or 5 seasons of DS9, he's a character from DS9.
Yeah, true.
Maybe those are the ones that are going to cross over, but yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to get many more people out of the cast, because there's a lot of people coming from Next Generation.
Yeah, I think if they're going to do DS9 and Voyager based on the back of Picard Season 3, they may do a season of Voyager Returns or Deep Space Nine Returns. Remember Defiant, the Defiant ship for DS9. Like they may do something like that where they, based on how successful the Picard Season 3 may or may not be, they'll go, oh my god, look at this, we brought everyone back, let's do it one more time. Here's all your Voyager teams, and there's everyone back, and then here's all your DS9 Defiant, and everyone's back.
Yeah.
And it's just these event seasons, etc.
Exactly. As we've said, Paramount strategy seems to be to have 52 weeks of Star Trek on every year, and Season 3 is going to be the final part of Picard, so I guess they may want to replace that with a Janeway series or a series exploring the Delta Flyers. How about that from Voyager?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Thank you so much, William. Jamie Lawton says, just finished watching the finale and like the rest of the season, really enjoyed it. Loved all the Easter eggs throughout the whole season. Excellent stuff, Jamie. Really good to hear, because I think, I think we've enjoyed the season as well, for sure. And what's not to like when you have, John Delancey coming back as Q, you have the old cast coming from season 1 coming back, around Picard. And so, yeah, lots of Easter eggs. Love the Khan folder. So really, glad you enjoyed this season overall, Jamie. Thanks for the feedback.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jamie. Richard Blaze also had some thoughts on this episode. He says, looks like another generic episode for me. Killer drones, face masks, Ella face off. John Woo has a lot to answer for. Oh no, manual control to destroy drones. Files deleted. Oh, who could be doing that? WTF? But that means, holy moly, I wasn't expecting that. But actually, that seems to make some kind of weird sense. He could have done that. Petulant child deleting files, bloody ungrateful kids. Cocky, arrogant child walking around outside after crippling parent and accidentally bumping into WTAF. But mind is currently exploding. OMG. Music. Oh god, sweet, sweet Star Trek music. Please do not let Chris sing, hum, whistle, or use any other part of his body to replicate it. Oh bugger, back to Chateau Bohr. Picard and Q, utterly beautiful speeches. When Q admitted he was dying, that was it. I was sobbing. Convenient MacGuffin to get them back to the future. Rios staying? No way. What a surprise. Picard and Q hugging. Well, Picard hugging Q had me bawling my eyes out again. Huge missed beat revealing the Borg Queen that everyone guessed from episode 2. The Borg ship and Federation together was really special. But the anomaly, have I missed something? What is it? Where does it come from? And why is it only important for the last 10 minutes of a season?
Exactly.
And if I'm being really picky, if it expelled enough energy for it to be seen from several planets, surely it would have been too powerful for all their shields. Music again, the buggers. See above regarding Chris. Picard, the smooth wordsmith bastard. Music again. And again, refer to previous comment regarding Chris and his musical ability. Really on the fence with that finale. Some of the emotional beats were really strong, whilst others just felt rushed and a bit messy. Closing up the threads was all too convenient and felt like they were only really insulting the audience. Approximately 45 minutes of the finale of a season is nowhere near enough time to satisfyingly wrap it all up. I wanted so much more for this series, but I felt it just misfired, and a real season by numbers at times. Hoping that season 3 adds something more for all the characters left. I'd still be happy with one last journey with the whole crew negotiating with an enemy to bring peace for a time. I'm off now to finish watching Enterprise. Personally, I think that's great. And then to gorge on TNG, Deep Space Nine and Voyager. I may be some time. Live long and prosper. Thanks so much, Richard. Really good to hear your thoughts. And quite similar to our thoughts as well. While the episode had some really great moments, filtered through a little too little runtime to give them the gravitas, I suppose, that they probably needed. It would have been great to have them spread a bit more across the season.
Especially when they had the time of 2 episodes, at least 9 and 8, and possibly even 7, that where they could have used that more thoroughly to explore what's going on here, for sure. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. Thanks, Rich. I'm now going to respond to you through the journey that is my musical ability. No, I'm not. But thank you very much. It's sarcasm noted. I will be very careful with my musical gifts in the future. Just wait to see season 3. I will respond in only song.
You know the way Santa Claus gives you cola at Christmas if you've been a bad boy? I guess those are the kind of gifts you're giving out, Chris, is it?
Exactly. Yeah, we've all been naughty Trekkies. That's why we got season 2.
Although not to talk about economy, I guess if Santa Claus is giving out cola at Christmas, that would actually probably be a good thing for a lot of people this year, right?
True,
anyway.
It's true. Literally, he's also like personally leaning into fossil fuels. Yeah. He hasn't fully gone on to kind of greener kind of sustainability yet, but he's getting there.
Yes.
But moving on, we also have some feedback from Heather Wallace, who had this to say. I can honestly say I've never been that excited to see Wesley Crusher in the last 30 years. Do we think all those soldier brigati turned into proto-Borg and were transported into the walls of the chateau would be happy to know that everything came out because Q wanted to show Jean-Luc how special he is? Why exactly was Q trying to stop Renee? I feel like the writers were only a day ahead of shooting and didn't themselves know what exactly was happening. Thanks, Heather. Yep, there's definitely 1 or 2 bits that we still have questions on and paradoxes and things like that. And you're right. I completely forgot about Seven's transporting of some of Borgati's proto-Borg into the walls. There is definitely now half transported skeletons fused to the stone walls in Shadow Picard that we have not discussed yet.
Absolutely.
That's another one.
No wonder that weapons seller was absolutely frightening to a young Jean-Luc.
Yes, exactly. There's just these half-built skeletons falling out of the wall as young Picard is running towards his mother. There's just these dead skeletons leaning out.
If you think he had emotional problems after what happened to his mother, wait till he sees all the skeleton bodies in the basement. Yeah,
maybe that's the reference to monsters that his mum keeps talking about.
Yeah, maybe she saw all the skeletons, wondering what the hell happened.
Thanks so much, Heather, for the feedback. Really good to get your thoughts, and I'm kind of with you. I think on the writers, I think they need a whiteboard and post-it notes.
I'm gonna have to give a little bit of credit to the writers. I know I'm always giving excuses for people. The big excuse I have for what's happened in this season is COVID. I do think the production pressure to get this show finished has caused some major problems in the writer's room. Everybody on Zoom trying to break these stories and resolve these stories. It clearly has stood out on many occasions that there's been problems in the writings of this series. I wish they'd just been given a bit more time to resolve it and come back around and fix some of the issues, because there are some serious problems in this season. But I'm going to have to blame COVID and the production to push this when it shouldn't have been pushed. It needed a bit more time overall. So totally agree with you as well, Heather.
No, agreed. Look, these writers are some of the best writers in Hollywood at this point in time. Like, you've got Mark Bernard and you've got Chris. You've got Akiva Goldsman. Like, these people are not like fly by night kind of writers. They are some of the best staff writers, kind of like writer room people. They've got history. So I think it is that. I think, like, again, we know that COVID was problems with production, with everything. So
Yeah.
let's just call this what it was. This is a casualty of the times we're in, and hopefully season 3 is even better.
I know, it just concerns me that the filming's already finished for that, which means it still was impacted by COVID. They didn't give it a break and wait a little bit longer like a lot of other productions did. But thanks so much for that, Heather.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. Also, Joe Herbers says, even with low expectations, that was a weak season finale. So much random stuff happening. I was hopeful with the first episode, but it was downhill from there. There were so many things that only make sense if the whole thing was a Q fantasy world, like in the Next Generation episode Tapestry. But Q told Guinan he didn't plan for them to go back in time, that they went on their own. So what was Q's plan in the alternative world to help Picard move forward? They went to this supposed alternative future where all Picard's friends were nearby in positions of power, even though the whole galaxy was different, and they somehow inhabited the minds of their alternate selves, unlike a mirror universe or time travel. So again, Q told Guinan that he didn't plan for them to go back in time. They went on their own. So what was Q's plan in the alternative world to help Picard with his emotional problems? It was great seeing John Delancey as Q again, and he had some nice scenes. I like Brent Spiner, but the scenes with his character made little sense, especially in the last few episodes. And why did the Watcher look exactly like Laris? Thanks so much, Joe, for the feedback. I'm definitely with you. I think, John Delancey as Q was great, and I really enjoyed the scenes there. I think the eternal question of why the Watcher looks exactly like Laris,
We're not going to answer.
we just can't answer that, I think. It needs to be explained in some way.
I think we just have to roll with it and say,
I think so.
it looks like it, because that's a Star Trek thing.
And I think with Brent Spiner, again, I think, again, with you just mentioning that, the one thing that made no sense to me again was a disgraced researcher seemingly with an endless pot of money on the board of a science mission and research science mission.
He bought his way there, though. We
I know, but I don't think I guess it just shows everyone at that moment is like just nuts about money, I guess. So
Elon Musk, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, sorry, Dr. Soong.
Yeah. So, I think Soong's storyline is a little bit hit and miss for me as well, and interesting around what was the plan with Q. I think we just discussed that on the podcast, and the only way at this moment that I can possibly rationalize it is, Q was never going to take him to the final end moment, and so was expecting some journey for Picard, and this journey happened to take him back in time, I guess. But great to get your thoughts, Joe, from that. We have a final voicemail from Matt Murdoch on the finale music.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Thanks so much, Matt, for sending in your voicemail for your thoughts on the finale music about it. His thoughts at the start of the season on the music for Star Trek Picard Season 2. And now we have some thoughts on the finale. Thanks, Matt.
Hello, Derek, John, and Chris. Another season of Picard is done. And I know that I've said before that I don't like to comment too much on it, but I did really enjoy this finale. Of course, I'm an emotional sap, and so that hit all of the emotional sap strings for me. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to congratulate Mr. Russo on an amazing season of film scoring, especially the way that he incorporated the main theme into so many aspects of this story throughout the whole season in some very surprising ways. I sent in feedback at the beginning of the season regarding how he had changed the main theme using all different kinds of things to make it seem darker or more perilous. There was no greater example of that. It was almost kind of an amazing swan song in a way for Mr. Russo. In the scene where the shields are up and they're fighting off that energy that's coming from the entity, one of the motifs from the main theme was used, and I was just floored by how it was used. Not entirely in a different way from the way it was used in the main theme throughout the whole series, but just the excitement that it generated and the recognition of how powerful music can be as a storyteller. The motive that I'm talking about, really, in its most beautiful form, comes from, I think, Derek's favorite version of the theme. I'm talking about this. It creates a great, what I like to call, melodic shape in the fact that it reaches up, falls back down. And if you just keep those notes in mind, don't worry about the rhythm that they're played in, but just the notes themselves. These notes, and then in the end part of the phrase, this note also. Those are the 5 notes that were used throughout that whole sequence where the Borg had coordinated all of the shields and was holding off the energy through the use of all of the Federation ships. And while during the course of the use of the main theme for season 2, the credits, so to speak, we heard that motive prominently with all kinds of motion underneath it, all kinds of harmonic dissonance underneath it, which would tend to put you to think that it was about Picard being in peril, when in actuality, I think what it was pointing to was this very moment, in the fact that the strength of Picard to trust Agnes and her abilities to save the entire sector, despite all of the perilousness happening around it. This piece of music during this scene justifies the changing of the theme. That again, I'm sorry, Derek, I'm not picking on you, but I know that you didn't like the change very much, at least initially. This scene is why I think Rousseau decided to do this whole musical tapestry all season. This right here. Pulsating rhythm that just raises your heart rate. Are the shields going to hold up? Is the universe still safe? The strange harmonic sequences that go not underneath the melody, but on top of it. It's almost like the melody here, rather than floating over the top of a harmonic bed to tell us what is going on, is actually the power that's behind the shield. The strength of Picard trusting, while all of the perilousness is way above in these high strings that's kind of cascading down the same way the beam energy was. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you guys for doing a great job covering this season. Always great to share a fandom with people who care. And while I'm not sure that I think that it was the best season overall that we could have gotten, I sure did like the ending. Take care.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I love hearing your thoughts about the music. Really good. I can confirm that I did get to really enjoy the theme tune for this season, but you're right. My favorite version is the beautiful, hopeful theme from season 1. So yeah, I love that they used that to underscore that Picard had learnt and will trust this new Borgatti to work with with Starfleet. I thought that was a great way to underline it there. Excellent stuff, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. I look forward so much to your voicemails, and just because the music aspect is something I rarely really trigger into and notice until you actually call out these bits, and I'm like, oh my god, yeah, that makes the composer here is amazing. Look what they've done. So yes, thank you so much for your feedback on this. Like, it really just brings another level to some of the feedback and some of our discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Matt, for the musical feedback. It's always great hearing the different aspects of the score that underlies this. I certainly would be interested in your thoughts on Danny Elfman's score as well.
Yes.
For Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Dare I say it?
Chris has not seen it yet, so we will say no more, John.
Exactly.
We will be back next week with our discussion about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is in cinemas now. So go see that and let us know your thoughts. Thank you so much to everyone who's provided feedback for this season of Star Trek Picard. You can, of course, share any further thoughts with us. You can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Pop over to Facebook on facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. Answer a very simple question and you can enter our group in there and you can share any thoughts that you have about this season of Picard. We will be back discussing that in a couple of weeks' time when the guys are back from their various trips. And once again, thank you to our supporters, those of you that have been listening to the podcast, sharing the podcast, supporting us over on Patreon. For example, the wonderful Victor Von Doom, who is our Patreon for this episode. Thank you, Victor.
Yes, thank you so much, Victor, for all your support and, of course, all the feedback that you provide. Great hearing your thoughts. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, and we hope you enjoyed the castle in Latveria that you are listening to us from right now.
That would be awesome.
I hear the podcast sounds really good in the castle.
It really does. It's the echoing hollowness of my voice echoes throughout the chambers.
And if you want to support us with any monthly amount, you can support us on patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries. But if you'd just like to support us with a one-off amount, you can donate to us over on buymeacoffee.com/tvpi. If you'd like to support us another way, you can just share the podcast on any of your social media channels. And we can extend the love for TV podcast industries.
Because remember, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers, sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the love, everyone's support in any which way they decide to provide it is absolutely great. So thank you so very much, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. Yes, not only will we be back with the Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness podcast, we will have our wrap-up podcast of both Star Trek Picard and Disney Plus's Moon Knight series as well. So, and of course, we will be providing the answers and the draw for the pub quiz as well.
Yes, and the 10-forward quiz. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us throughout the season. Hopefully you'll be back with us for Picard Season 3. We will, of course, be back covering Picard Season 3 when that does come out.
Yes, thank you so much, fellow Trekkies, Trekkers, and everything in between. As always, been a pleasure, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Yes, great discussing all things Star Trek and Picard with you, fellow Trekkers and Trekkies. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep trekking. Bye.